Good evening. I'd like to call the regular council meeting for Monday, March 23rd, 2020 to order. And I'll begin with a territorial acknowledgement, acknowledging that we are holding this evening's meeting in the territory of the Wasanish Nations. And I would like to welcome those listening to and watching our live cast this evening, and also mention that it will be also video recorded and available on our website in the coming days. We do have an amendment to our agenda this evening. We have a late item. Last council meeting, we reviewed and gave first, second, and third reading to procedure bylaw number 2012, amendment number 3, with regards to our council procedures. We do have a recommendation from staff to amend that, and if we could add that under item 5A on our agenda this evening, and I look for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. I'd now like to call upon our Mr. Randy Humble, our Emergency Operations Center Director, to give an update on the COVID-19.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Push the mic. Oops.
Okay, we'll just wait for audio.
Oh, it might have been seconded for Terry's mic. Do you want to cut that?
You want to take Terry's mic?
Take that. I'm guessing that might be what happened.
Please bear with us as we've created social distancing in our council chamber. We have to reconnect a microphone.
Or just take your mic.
Yep.
Over here, that's okay. Okay, good evening to Mayor and Council and those members of the public that are viewing the live webcast. So this evening, Deputy EOC Director Brett Mickelson and myself will provide a status update regarding COVID-19, in particular as it relates to the town of Sydney. And then Mr. Andrew Hissick will provide a staffing report regarding the town of Sydney. So as of March 17th, the town of Sydney EOC is operating at a level 2. Upgrading to a level 2 is allowed for additional advanced planning and gives us greater capacity for a response and communication efforts as part of the town. Key sections, areas of the EOC include the EOC Director, the Deputy Director. We have a liaison, a risk management section, information section, operations, planning, which also includes a recovery planning chief, logistics, and finance. We also have the policy group, which is the mayor, and we've been meeting with the mayor on a daily basis regarding EOC operations. The EOC is staffed by town employees from all departments and also includes liaisons from the Sydney Business Improvement Area Society, as well as the Saanich Peninsula Chamber of Commerce. And their focus has been on business communications, reaching out to the business community and having regular updates on their website, as well as focusing on business recovery planning. I have to say, because of the actual foresight and dedication of the fire department, all TAN staff have been regularly participating in emergency planning exercises to prepare to respond to different types of emergencies. And this includes having a generic plan regarding a pandemic. However, no matter how much emergency planning and preparation we may have done in the past, actually having to deal with a situation like the current one means that everyone is called upon to do the very best they can. And this is under difficult and high pressure and stressful conditions. I must commend town staff, both inside and outside employees, the fire department, and members of council for the exemplary work that they have done during these past weeks. everyone has stepped up to the plate to ensure our community is informed, supported, protected, and safe. We must all remain calm. I heard an interesting quote today from the province that says we must focus on channeling our inner Bonnie Henry, and everyone looks to her as being sort of the communication person regarding public health notices and updates. The impacts on all our lives are considerable. We're all facing the unknown, and that can be scary and at times anxiety-inducing. We're all in this together, and we must support the local health authorities in modeling what indeed calm looks like. We must also model what physical distancing looks like as well. As a local government, our role more than ever is to educate, it's to communicate and share ideas on how we can all help flatten the COVID-19 curve within our community. So what I'm going to do is I'll turn it over to Fire Chief Mickelson, and he's going to provide you a bit more detail regarding the operational side of the town's Emergency Operations Center, and then I'll have a few more remarks before I turn it over to Mr. Hisik.
Mayor and Council, good evening, and I will again just provide a brief update on what we've been focused on in the past week at the Emergency Operations Center. That has primarily been focused on updating and revising our response plans in response to obviously what we're dealing with. A primary focus has been on recovery planning, and again, we early and often we engage the SBIA and Chamber, and they're working as a part of the EOC to actively participate in business and in the recovery process. They are assisting with messaging to the business community and ensuring the business community is aware of the provincial and federal programs available to them and their staff to get through this very difficult time. Both the Chamber and the SBIA have been providing regular updates to their members via newsletters and on their websites. The SBIA has included a web page that provides details, changes to services, hours of operation, and so forth for the local businesses, and it's been very, very well received to date. Business continuity planning is another key focus, and we're working with the SBIA and Chamber to support them and their members in developing business continuity plans, and the town has developed their own to ensure essential services are provided to residents to ensure the health and safety of our staff and public. For the town, this includes a new policy with work for home options and direction regarding the maintenance of non-essential and essential services. I would just add to that, I'd like to highlight the great work that's been done in the EOC by our town staff, by our CAO, and by my team who are working in the EOC, but also we're going and putting out structure fires in Central Saanich at night as a nice little distraction. So we're working hard and we're doing our best. So I want to really highlight that our team is working hard. The EOC is in daily communication with our senior care homes, our extended care facilities, to share information and provide support and business continuity assurance every day. Our deputy chief speaks with each of the directors of care there to see what are their issues, what are their challenges, and how we can help, because those are definitely the folks that are most at risk, and that's been very well received. We are communicating with residents through a variety of methods, including our website and social media pages. Our daily website updates focus on the most current information relative to Sydney residents, along with general information to keep our residents informed of the situation from a federal and global level. We're working on expanding our communication methods. Today we posted physical posters on multi-residential stratas and distributed posters to several local businesses. We're also working with Radio Sydney to provide regular audio updates, which they'll broadcast. Our public health agencies are calling upon all of us to practice social distancing. We need to stay home as much as possible. When we're out in the public, we need to stay 2 meters apart from others. The town hall has closed. Playgrounds, sport courts, and the skate park, and we're calling on all residents to please respect these closures. And I'll turn it back over to our CAO. Thank you.
Thanks, Fire Chief. So once again, I want to assure council and the public, those that are listening to the live webcast. The Town of Sydney and its EOC is absolutely committed to maintaining essential services to our community and is working hard to ensure the health and safety of its residents, and in particular of our more vulnerable residents within the community. I would also like to thank and acknowledge our community, and this includes our residents, our businesses, and community organizations who are also pulling together during these unprecedented times. In particular, to our business community, I think you truly deserve a special acknowledgement. With the rapidly shifting landscape, I know how overwhelming and incredibly difficult this must be. Please know that the EOC is working with the SBIA and the Chamber to help Sydney entrepreneurs navigate this challenging time. Both organizations are working out of the EOC, as the Chief has said, with a focus on information sharing and business recovery planning for the future. We're all in this together, and now more than ever, we need to look out for each other, and that includes our family, our friends, our neighbors, our local businesses, and those within the community that are more vulnerable to this virus. Again, I want to emphasize that we all need to continue to follow the advice and the orders of our healthcare professionals. I would urge our residents to, on a regular basis, view the information that's on the Town of Sydney website at www.sydney.ca. This is up-to-date information, and it's informative, but it's also reliable and credible information as well. So again, I would urge our citizens to go there. I'll turn it over to Mr. Andrew Hissick. He's our Director of Finance, and he's going to provide a bit of an update on staffing within the municipal organization currently. Andrew?
The focus of my update tonight is actually of a financial nature, because I know there's a lot of worry and uncertainty at this time about being able to pay bills as they come due. And it's the town's intention to make things better for people, not worse. Having said that, we have to work within our powers as we try and do that. What we're expecting is that the province is going to announce some temporary measures for local government that will give us greater flexibility and more freedom to provide relief to our taxpayers. These may include measures such as extending the normal tax due date from July 2nd to another date later in the year, delaying the payment dates for major financial commitments like the school tax and regional district levies, and perhaps providing access to additional working capital for local government until our regular revenues start to roll in. Without some of these temporary relaxations, we may not have the power to do what many are asking of us. For instance, the tax due date and the tax penalties are not optional. These are required by legislation. We're already doing what we can by not applying the 10% tax penalty as many are doing right at the July 2nd date. For many years now, we've been applying only a 5% penalty at the deadline and another 5 2 months later. And we certainly don't penalize people because we want to. It's a necessary evil to make sure we have the operating revenue we need to provide the services to our community. Until the interim measures from the province come out, we're not sure what we're going to be able to do, but you have our assurances that we'll take those measures and we'll make the best of them for the benefit of our community. My best guess at this point will be that delay in the tax deadline I spoke of. And once the details do come out, we'll be in a better position to get more exact information out to the public. With respect to utility billings, our first utility billing deadline for this year has passed, and the vast majority of our account holders paid on time. For the relative few who have not yet paid, we're not going to be applying the late payment penalty. Our next billing was slated to go out in mid to late April, and at this time, the plan is to take the readings and process the bills. But operating circumstances are changing daily, if not hourly. We may not be able to do that as planned. But the goal was to get the bills out and invite those who can pay on time to please do so to help us with our cash flow. And for those who cannot pay, we would not be looking to set a hard due date or to apply penalties. There has been some talk about what can be done for small local businesses regarding tax relief. Now, we currently do not have the tools to be able to treat small business any differently from the so-called big business. And furthermore, we do not have the tools to differentiate between those small businesses that may need assistance from those that do not. When the provincial guidelines come down, we'll know more. But for the time being, I believe that any tax relief measures will have to be applied across the board, across all sectors. There will be impacts on town operations. There's no doubt that any significant delay in the town's revenue flow will impact what we're able to do this year. Property taxes and utility fees make up virtually all of the town's revenues. Dipping into our reserves to maintain operations will have an impact on our results for this year. However, it's far too early and there are too many unknowns to start measuring those impacts. We ask for patience from council and the community as we work through these details. I firmly believe that the town has a good reputation for providing timely and thorough financial information to our community, and this will not change. As more solid information becomes available, we'll bring it before council in an open meeting and get it out to the community. That's all I have for now.
I want to thank Mr. Humble, our Emergency Operations Center Director, Fire Chief Mr. Mickelson for as Assistant EOC Director, and Mr. Hissick, who is now in the role of Acting Chief Administrative Officer, and our Chief Financial Officer for your detailed reports to Council and, as importantly, to our community. I would like to just add a few comments. We know the Provincial Health Officer's direction to each and every one of us in the province and in our community regarding social distancing, self-isolating, not gathering in numbers, and other specific directives has led to immense social and economic disruption in our community and in communities around the globe. I want to applaud the vast majority of residents and businesses in Sydney for keeping level heads in these unprecedented times. However, we know we need 100% compliance with the health officer's directives to have the best outcome and flatten the curve in this crisis. Sydney is a close-knit and a well-connected community, and this will help us in these difficult times. We need to support each other by taking care physically and mentally of ourselves, our families, and reaching out, albeit electronically, to our friends and our neighbors. I want to thank Fire Chief and Emergency Coordinator Brett Mickelson for his foresight and work to include dedicated state-of-the-art Emergency Operations Center facilities in the new Community Safety Building. It is serving our community extremely well in this health emergency. As you have heard from our EOC staff and CAO this evening, we have a resourceful team set up, working together and in frequent communications with EOCs in our neighboring municipalities on the peninsula, the CRD EOC, Vancouver Island and provincial health authorities, and Emergency Management BC. The three peninsula mayors are conferencing regularly, and we are joining other mayors in the province to conference and express our priorities to Dr. Bonnie Henry and provincial ministers who have made themselves available to us on a weekly basis. We will be most successful and have the best outcome with municipalities working together with the CRD, the provincial, and the federal authorities. All levels of government know how important it is to communicate with you, the residents and businesses in our community. You are seeing daily updates from the federal and provincial authorities. Today, the provincial legislature met, and the Parliament will be meeting tomorrow and the day after to enact further emergency legislation to bring supports to residents and businesses across the country. The town of Sydney posted its first bulletin on the town website on March 4th. There were 6 detailed daily bulletins posted last week. There are hundreds of people accessing this important information daily. It's a reliable source of information and includes links to other reliable sources of information at the provincial, federal level. Again, as you've likely heard, well, you've heard it a number of times this evening and probably in other places in other media today, follow the advice of the health authorities. Take care of yourselves, your families, and reach out to your neighbors, and we appreciate the support. They will appreciate the support by lending a helping hand. We will get through this together. Thank you. And I'd like to turn to our regular agenda. We would next move to public participation period. Sorry, I'm going to back up one step and turn to my council colleagues. And do you have any questions this evening of staff who have given their reports? Councillor Duncan, then Councillor O'Keefe.
The left button mutes everyone.
I didn't press it.
I don't.
Okay, there it works now. I believe Councillor O'Keefe was first, but I'll take the skip. I had a question. So from the very beginning, our EOC has been structured in a way that's communicated really well with the business community, and I've gotten lots of emails from the SBIA from that capacity, and that's been great as a member. But I'm wondering about those who are not within the business community, if we have a better way of directly communicating with them. They can choose to go and find the website, and whenever I direct people to it, they're like, oh, and they're very glad. But it just seems like some people need that push just to be directed to it. And if we have a way, and I was on a call earlier today where I heard from a municipality in Ontario that said they were using their BlockWatch system. And we know that there is somebody in our RCMP here who has been starting to recompile that information. And what they felt in this other municipality, what was useful about that was that this was good not just for the pandemic, but for if there was a big snowstorm or for when an earthquake hit, that having that capacity to get to 60 neighborhoods all at once and have them start providing the word of mouth, or in this case, word of phone tree, would be really helpful, and especially for identifying people who might be stuck in their home, unable to come out, or who are not who are a vulnerable population who are not necessarily already within an identified facility. So I'm just kind of wondering if we have that capacity yet, or if that's something that we could look into. There's 7 of us who can kind of continue spreading that, but it would be nice to have those other members of the community as well. We know the community association has also been contacted to do that, but I don't know what the Venn diagram of people who belong to community association and just kind of the general public would be.
If I can respond to that through
Yes, please,
the
Mr.
mayor.
Humble.
I think absolutely that we'll look at any potential resource or opportunity we can to help direct people to reliable information, in particular information on our website. If there's an opportunity to utilize RCMP BlockWatch, absolutely, we would look at that. I'm not sure right now. We've had regular communications with the RCMP detachment as part of our EOC, and I'm not sure at what level right now they're working at with respect to, I know a lot of the officers that are meant to be responsible for such things as BlockWatch, for example, have been reassigned to other critical areas, etc. But leave that with us, and we'll certainly discuss that with the RCMP and see if that's something that potentially we could look at doing, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, and to, I know council is certainly aware, but to members of the public, we have long had on the Town of Sydney website the capability of signing up to receive notices automatically when there is news. Mm-hmm. And currently we are looking at, we will make it more easily during daily staff bulletins to make that request for regular updates so they come automatically to you. Mr. Humble.
Just one more point, Mr. Mayor, if I may as well. We've the homepage on our website, we've tried to make it as absolutely clear as possible in terms of the the link to the information on COVID-19 as it relates to Sydney. So it's I think it's much easier and certainly high profile. So people that visit our website shouldn't have any problems navigating that and finding the actual web page on COVID-19.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. My question is on the same lines as Councillor Duncan's on the business community. And the SBIA has their membership, the Chamber has their membership, and also other ways to reach out to, say, the West Side. And I'm wondering if a way to do that might, I'm not sure what sort of information we keep in our business licensing department. And so now that the SBIA and the Chamber are officially part of the EOC, whether that is information that could be shared with them, that would allow them to check off, to identify those businesses that are missing from their distribution lists and then reach out. So just an idea as how to incorporate those businesses as well.
Through the mayor, no, thank you for that, Councillor O'Keefe. We can certainly look at that and see if see what we can do and see what information we could potentially provide around that. See how much more it might expand beyond their current distribution list, but it's something that we can certainly look at. Yeah.
Thank you. And my other question is about those employees affected by businesses that are closing down. And I'm not sure if that falls within the EOC or the business continuity aspect, but in terms of, has any consideration been given to the Shoal Centre operates an employment branch there, in terms of matching up maybe individuals who have been affected by layoffs and matching them up, say, with Save on Foods that is needing maybe more people there. I'm not sure if that's something that they would consider.
I think it's something that that as we again move much further along into the business recovery component. I mean, right now, it's, you know, the EOC is very much a focus on sort of the business continuity planning component and actually planning for the potential impacts on our community when the true impacts of, I guess, of COVID-19 potentially reach us a week or 2 weeks out, that type of thing. Right now, what I'm hearing from the BIA and Chamber and their communications with the businesses is that right now they're very much focusing on triage mode. I mean, they're really trying to address their own business continuity and staffing needs. They're really trying to get, you know, be able to sort of deal with all the communication and information that's being provided to them. So I think that's something that we need to look at the future, but I think now it's probably a bit too challenging to start honing our focus on that particular area.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was, okay. I guess I was wondering if through the Shoal Centre, their employment branch, whether there might be opportunities, say, for people who are affected to register with them, and then with some sort of marketing campaign to put it out to the community. If you need yard work done this spring or summer, or how the rest of the community can maybe help support those employees that might be affected in the short term. So just for consideration.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gunnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question regarding any specific things we're doing for the homeless in our community. If you could comment on that.
So we've had discussions with the RCMP regarding our more vulnerable homeless and street entrenched, etc. And they are working with their members on trying to reach out and at least communicate with them. We've also, through the Vancouver Island Health Authority, we have a contact person there that's been provided. She's the Director of Mental Health with VHA, and we've linked in with her and are looking at potential resources or opportunities we might be able to provide to our homeless individuals within the community. We are actually now trying to keep our public washroom facilities open and have regular cleaning schedules for those facilities. We know facilities like Panorama and the library, a lot of persons with no fixed address, homeless individuals, use those facilities for as a place to go to stay warm, to wash, to do those sorts of things. So again, we're aware of that, and keeping our public washroom facilities is one thing that we can open, is one thing that we can look at doing. But we are working with the RCMP, and we'll continue to work with our VHA contacts as well.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you again for those reports this evening. And I'd now like to move to public participation. This is the time when we normally have members of the public come forward and address council in approximately 3 minutes. As many folks in the public will know, last week we put out communication, and we did put it at the top of our agenda that was issued for this meeting, that members of the public are encouraged not to attend council meetings in person, but rather to submit their comments or questions to council via email at the email address of admin@sydney.ca prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting. And please note in your email that it is intended for public participation period, and any correspondence marked as such will be recorded under public participation period and read aloud in the meeting. Please keep your comments brief, as the allotted time remains limited, and your comments may have to be summarized to fit within the allotted time, but we welcome public participation temporarily by this means. We have no submissions for this evening's meeting, and just before we move on to the next agenda item, I also want to comment that we are practicing social distancing in the council chamber, and we are currently, as are several other municipalities, currently working towards a bylaw amendment to allow us to have electronic meetings. Electronic meetings will also be webcast in the future, and some of my colleagues may be attending by video and voice conferencing, but we will broadcast a webcast live at our future meetings to members of the public. I'd now like to move to 5A bylaws, and this is to turn to the late item of procedure bylaw number 2012, amendment number 3 to our procedural bylaw, and I'll ask Mr. Hissick to introduce this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You'll recall that at the last council meeting, 3 readings were given to a change to our procedure bylaw that would allow for electronic meetings. Subsequent to that, there were some reservations concerned about leaving it so wide open, and the desire was to limit this functionality purely for in the event of a public emergency. So the way to do that at this point would be to rescind 3rd reading, hopefully agree on the new wording, the insertion of in the event of a public emergency in 9A, and if that's agreed upon, then to redo the 3rd reading. And there is a special council meeting this Thursday to potentially adopt this bylaw as amended.
A point of procedure, should we be amending or doing the amendment, rescind all the way back to 2nd reading and do the amendment in 2nd reading versus 3rd?
I believe at this point 3rd is sufficient.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I'll move that 3rd reading be rescinded.
Discussion? I'll call a question. Those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
I'll move that the bylaw be amended by inserting in the event of a public emergency at the beginning of 9A.
Second.
Discussion? I'll question. Those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hissick.
And I'll move 3rd reading as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll now move to item 5B, which is development variance permit application number DV 100293, 9335 Webster Place, to reduce the minimum required front setback in order to legalize a recently constructed addition to a single-family dwelling. This is a setback that I think was measured in inches, a few inches. We have had this discussed and presented and discussed at previous council meeting. We did go out to written notice, we did have written submissions. We had a copy of a petition from area residents. I believe there was 8 or 9 residents. 11 residents, thank you, are in support of this particular variance request. Those would be the neighbors to this address. And we have a recommendation.
Move the application be approved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call a question. Those in favor? The motion carries. Thank you. Now have adoption of minutes.
So move.
Okay, that is both for the regular council meeting of March 9th, 2020 and special council meeting of March 16th, 2020. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll now turn to business arising from minutes. This is for information purposes only. There are no motions required. At our in-camera council meeting of March 9th, 2020, we resolved that the letter from the Sydney Business Improvement Area Society dated February 28th, 2020 be received, and that Brad Edgett be appointed to the Economic Advisory Committee for a 2-year term ending in 2021. Secondly, we had a resignation that the letter, and we received the letter from Mr. Mike Thompson dated February 29th, 2020, advising of his resignation as the town's representative from the Saanich Peninsula Water and the Saanich Peninsula Wastewater Commissions be accepted, and that the letter be sent to Mr. Thompson thanking him for his service, and that the town advertise for a new citizen appointment. Now I'd like to turn to, I believe we have one council report. Councillor Fallon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually, as we were, Councillor Garnett was speaking earlier, I remembered at a second one. First one is from, just got an update from the library board, and I'll just read this out. During a surprise announcement last Friday, Macmillan Publishers announced its decision to lift their embargo on new ebook releases and the 1-copy limit introduced on November 1st, 2019. In addition, they will also be lowering some ebook prices on a short-term basis to help expand libraries and collections during this difficult time. And Virl was saying that this gives our customers better access to the ebooks and content they need, and this is especially important for our customers who cannot afford to purchase digital content and those who have visual impairment and rely on digital ebooks in order to use refreshable Braille devices. So I think that's good news for our community, especially in this this time. The second quick update is about 2 weeks ago, I participated in Volunteer Victoria's point in time count, which was a homeless count, and I had requested and was given a Sydney location to do the interviews and the survey, and we certainly do have homeless. That was clearly evident. But what I was very, very impressed with, how willing the individuals that my partner and I met to participate in the surveys and to answer some very personal questions in order to help know what facilities are needed out there. This information will eventually go back to the federal government in order to help our communities and for funding for homelessness. But one of the clear points that came out is when the question was, if you weren't in a facility last night or recently, why don't you go into shelter housing? And they all said the same thing: it was safety and security. Their items are pilfered with and taken, and their personal safety. They feel safer sleeping rough than they do going into shelter. So that was quite an eye-opener for me. So at some point we will get the results of the survey back, and I'll be pleased to share that with Council.
Thank you for those updates, Councillor Fallon. Councillor Duncan, you also have an update.
Thank you. I had a report from the CRD Water Commission meeting that we had on March 18th. I know I had seen on the CBC, people had been asking the questions about COVID-19, and some people were worried that they'd have to buy water because they were worried maybe it would survive in water systems. So I'd wanted to give this update from the CRD, because he did address it at that time, which was it doesn't survive. This virus doesn't survive in the water system, let alone after treatment. And of course, we have UV treatment and chloramine treatment that's meant to kill, everything right up until the most resistant parasitic cysts. So our water is and will remain safe to drink in that manner. And he gave us an update on the amount of pre-planning and preparedness that we have just throughout the CRD, but specifically for the water systems, and making sure that they are able to have enough minimum staff available to keep the water system running, moving up training, bringing people back out of retirement. And we have about 50% redundancy now. So if anybody has to start going into self-isolation, we will always still have enough, of those trained staff with those really specific skills to keep that going. And that's just part of CRD's EOC. They're at level 2 as well as us. And they've been maximizing the stockpile of the chemicals on hand just because of the potential for disruptions in factory production. There's limitations on storage space for some of them because they require specialty containers, but it's really made them just look at our supply chain really well, right on top of the disruptions we were having to our trains, and then just China in general. It's kind of made everybody take a good look at that, and we're in good hands there. There were some questions from other commissioners about what the budget implications might be in any measures that we have to take for our water system, and they said at this point, no, immaterial so far. So.
Thank you for that update. Now I'd like to turn to committee reports, and we have the minutes from the Economic Advisory Committee of the meeting of February 14th.
I move receipt.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call the question in favor. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. And we have the minutes and recommendations for our Committee of the Whole meeting from March 16th, 2020. Councillor Wainwright.
I'll move that the minutes be received.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? The motion carries.
Okay, the first recommendation from committee, and I so move, is with respect to development permit application number DP 100816 and development variance permit application number DV 100294, and that's 9805 Seaport Place, to reduce the required side interior setback in order to construct a roof over a restaurant patio area. And I move that staff be directed to send out notices regarding development permit application number DP 100816 and development variance permit application number DV 100294, and that staff prepare a report similar to what would be presented to the Advisory Planning Commission to Council for consideration.
Second.
Discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you.
The second recommendation I so move is that the town invite CRD Arts Service to present to Committee of the Whole at a future meeting on their current strategic plan and programs.
Any discussion? All in favor? That motion carries. If I might, Councillor Wainwright, sorry? So we have one opposed. I'm sorry, I was jumping ahead. Sorry, if I might just go back and make a comment, as we're made aware on our agenda for the first recommendation with regards to that development variance permit application. We did have 2 public submissions received. I do want to acknowledge that those were received, and they will be considered by council when upon us receiving the staff report that was included in the recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Wainwright?
The next recommendation I so move is that the town enter into discussion with Artsy prior to the next budget to consider how to allocate arts funding to local groups.
Second.
Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? We have 1 opposed. Motion carries.
And the last recommendation I so move is that Councillor support Councillor Barbara Fallon proceeding to consult with local arts groups in the community and report back to council.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. We'll continue on with staff reports, and we have item 13A, which is the Town of Sydney OCP review and update project with regards to an RFP award, and a report from staff dated March the 6th. Mr. Humble, did we want to ask Mr. Newcomb to introduce this evening?
Yeah, certainly. I believe Cora's on the line, so.
Mr. For the benefit of the public, Mr. Newcomb is joining us by conference call this evening. Welcome, Mr. Newcomb.
Yes, I can hear you. Am I coming through okay? Yes. Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as Council's aware, the RFP for this project was issued at the end of January 2020. It was out there for about a month, and it closed in early March on the 2nd, I believe. And from that process, we received 4 submissions from qualified consultants. So following the close of the RFP process, the proposals were distributed amongst senior staff and from across the departments in the town hall. And this included Mr. Humble, Mr. Hissick, Ms. Clary, Ms. Verhagen, Mr. Robinson, and myself. And this review committee took the time to review these proposals in detail and have a discussion regarding which proposal we felt would be the best fit for this project for the town. So each proposal was discussed and evaluated against the criteria that was laid out in the RFP document, and this was a detailed criteria taking into account all the town's aims for the project. And staff also used their professional knowledge and experience and expertise to review the proposals based on similar projects we've undertaken in the past. So of the 4 proposals, all the consultants did have some experience with OCP development for small municipalities like Sydney. Of those 4, there were 2 that had clearly done more work than the other 2 for projects like this. And of those 2, Modus was, in staff's estimation, at the top of the pile in terms of their experience and what they would bring to the table. I think importantly, they understood the importance of public engagement to the success of a project like this. They included a fairly creative approach to their public engagement process, and staff took that as a very positive aspect of the proposal. They also have a strong multidisciplinary team that they would be bringing to the table, and this team has worked on OCP development for similarly sized communities in the recent past. In terms of the value of their proposal, we thought that this was definitely the top of the list, and the budget as well we thought was within what the town could achieve, and especially compared to the other qualified proposal, which was much higher in terms of cost. Modus also had a number of extras that they were proposing that we felt would really benefit the project significantly. And if council does approve staff's recommendation for this, we would be having a more detailed discussion about those extras and how they could be integrated into the project going forward. That's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Newcomb. I'll now open it up to council either to make a recommendation or ask questions of Mr. Newcomb. Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to ask some questions, if I may, before we move potentially to motions on this. If I may, through to staff, my certainly, and I'm sure a number of colleagues have some sensitivity to the cost of the undertaking, and in the current climate, perhaps some hypersensitivity to what that could mean excuse me, to future budget planning cycles. And so I would like, if you could please, Mr. Newcomb, to talk a little bit about specifically Urbanics and perhaps where the shortcoming came from. And I noticed that within the RFP, the reference was, these are described as optional extras. Were Urbanics solicited at all to provide some of these extras as well, which the likes of Modus had provided? So I'll leave it there for the moment.
Sure, through the mayor to Councillor Rintoul. I mean, all the proposals were, I guess, good, for lack of a better term. Urbanics is what I would call sort of a bare bones proposal. My belief is that they were focusing their competitive advantage on the price aspect. And as a result, I think it came across clearly in the proposal that the sort of depth of the review that we were hoping for, just we didn't see it there in terms of all the individual tasks that we laid out and the depth that we want to delve into each of those tasks. We sort of felt that rather than doing that, the Urbanics proposal was sort of talking about more a broad survey of those issues, and the degree that we hoped to delve into those issues probably wouldn't happen with that proposal. Another aspect that I think concerned us was the public engagement overview that was proposed in the proposal was very basic, much similar to the proposal that was, or sorry, the project, the OCP project that was done 10 years ago by the town in-house. It was sort of reflective of that, and while that wasn't a bad project by any means, I think the expectations in the community now, 10 years later, are significantly higher. So in terms of overall value, both in looking at the technical aspects of the project and what staff are hoping to achieve from this, as well as the degree of public engagement. Sure, while the price is very attractive, we just, in the long term, didn't think that the value was there. And this is a long-term project and document, and it's going to outlive the current circumstances and potential budget difficulties by a long time. So we thought focusing on that long term and getting the most value out of the project was the important part.
I may just in follow-up, Mr.
Yeah, just in addition, Mr. Humble, you wish to comment?
Yeah, I just my review of it as well is that again, as Corey stated, all of the submissions were good, but again, if you look at the level of experience around which firms, you know, quite frankly, have the most experience with actually undertaking a comprehensive OCP review, this is probably where Urbanics wasn't quite at the same level. And you know, correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, but I'm not sure if quite frankly, if they as past projects, whether or not they had indicated even undertaking a comprehensive review of an OCP with the municipality.
They have done a couple. Urbanics is known to be a very data-focused analytical firm, so you'll see that they do quite a few, you know, economic or data-based analyses, and it was clear too in their proposal that that's where their focus was. More on sort of looking at census numbers and things like that. And while that stuff's important for sure, the other aspects that we were focused on, especially as criteria that we laid out specifically in the RFP, just didn't come through to the degree that we had hoped for.
Councillor Rintoul.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Newcomb and Mr. Hummel for the fulsome answer. I think based on the information you provided, that makes me much more comfortable with the first recommendation, not necessarily the second, which references optional extras. And so I'll leave it to others who may have questions at this point, but I'm more inclined to move the first recommendation and see it move forward than the second. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I'm just wondering in terms of potential changes in the costs, one way or the other. So based on what was put in the request for proposals, the types of public engagement that we were proposing to do, and in light of this new environment that we're in, if we thought that if there was going to be less in-person engagement and more online sorts of things, whether that would impact the cost in any way, possibly in a downward capacity?
Sure. Through the mayor to council, I guess. I don't think there would be any change in cost to the project overall if it was sort of if we had to do sort of virtual public open houses or something like that. The staff time and the consultant time to attend those meetings would be the same. The meetings would likely be similar duration. There might be virtual question and answers or something like that. And the big cost there is really staff time to attend those meetings and to provide that, question and answer and interaction with the public. So that wouldn't change on either consultant or staff sides, and I think that would remain relatively the same. There might be some minimal cost savings in terms of not having to rent a venue, whether or not those would be offset by looking at some sort of virtual, open house tool. That's a possibility as well. But overall, I would say, most of this cost is based on consultant time, paying the consultant their hourly rate to do specific tasks, and whether that's virtual or in person, those tasks need to be completed. So I wouldn't see an overall change, significant change, based on having to do it on a virtual basis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Humble.
Just a follow-up on that as well. One thing that Corey and I discussed just recently is what we're going to have to look at now is obviously the scheduling associated with the timeline associated with the OCP, and take a good look at that. That's going to mean a discussion, obviously, with the selected consultant, and making sure that they're looking at the schedule as well, and that we're working together on determining what that's ultimately going to look like. There's no question that the impacts of COVID-19 and what we're going through right now is going to have an impact on the schedule of the OCP, and it could be significant. We don't know yet, but it's something that we're also going to have to sit down and work with the selected consultant on.
Randy, if I could just add to that too, I'd just say, assuming we move forward from tonight, fortunately, the first part of the OCP is largely consultant-focused work that doesn't have a public engagement component. It's developing that detailed work plan and public engagement strategy. So that's a month or two of work by the consultant, and coming back to council with those documents to get council familiarized with them and approving them. So hopefully, if things go in a positive way in terms of COVID, the disruption to the schedule may not be too severe.
Mr. Hisik, did you wish to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just with respect to the budgetary aspect, it's been made clear to staff by both council and the community that this is one of the more important projects we'll be undertaking over the next couple of years. And we understand there are budgetary concerns, but getting the budget right for this one is important. We'll look at what else we can cut to offset the additional $50,000 that we're asking for to be allocated to this in 2021. It's not until next year that we have to allocate the money, and we have plenty of time to review the budget in detail and come up with other areas that might not be as important.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor O'Keefe, did you have another question?
Yes, thank you. Later in the agenda, we're talking about the collaboration with North Saanich and Central Saanich, and you talked about coming up with the plan in the near future. So I'm wondering whether are there potential cost savings if we identify parts of the OCP that we could collaborate on with the other municipalities, maybe the environmental stuff, maybe the economic stuff, and whether that would have any impact on the overall budget for the plan.
Mr. Newcomb?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know that there would be cost savings. I think that the benefit of collaborating on specific aspects of the project might be that we are able to achieve some broader, for example, doing a peninsula-wide environmental assessment, if that is sort of part of something that all three communities want to focus on, and that fit into the project timing and scheduling and so forth. I think out of that we'd have a more robust and broader view of the peninsula's environmental status and information that could then be fed into our OCP. But I don't see that being a cost savings. I see that being sort of an add-on or a benefit that we could get for the same basic cost for a project.
Thank you.
Mr. Humble?
Yeah, I think again to add to Corey's comments, I think one of the challenges around this is that all three municipalities are on very different timelines right now with respect to where they are in their OCP review process. I know North Saanich and Central Saanich have indicated that they will be proceeding with an OCP review process. I don't know at what sort of stage they're at. I think, quite frankly, Sydney is further ahead in that. So again, we're going to have to sort of think about how COVID may impact their timelines around the OCP review processes and whether or not those indeed actually proceed. I don't know. So I think staff will report back, certainly, as if that's the direction of council on where those potential overlaps might be, and Corey's indicated one potential area, and we'll see where that goes. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Humble. So I have in my speaking order Councillor Wainwright and Councillor Fallock. Then I would like to ask a question.
Thank you. Actually, my question was answered by Mr. Hissick's comments.
And Councillor Fallock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to get back to the budgeting aspect of it and the two recommendations. So even if we move the second recommendation, that's for another year's budget. By the time we get there, if there are some changes that we have to make adjustments, that's something that can be addressed a year from now. Am I correct in that? Staff is nodding yes. Okay. So thank you. That's what I needed.
Okay, thank you. I'm in support of the first recommendation, but the second recommendation, I guess I have a comment, and that is, given the health emergency that we're in now, and as Mr. Humble has indicated, and we're aware, the timeline will be affected for this significant and lengthy project. Currently scheduled to complete at the end of 2021, but unknown at this point when we'll be able to resume, for example, public engagement or get into public engagement and so on. So I do appreciate that this is a placeholder, if you will, that we would reconsider. The $100,000 figure is a placeholder we would reconsider in 2021 budget deliberations. But I'm just wondering, given I know staff starts to work on budget more intensively in the fall, that given we will appreciate better where we are in the health emergency, and that it's still in advance of our 2021 deliberations, that staff might come back sometime in the fall with a recommendation on that amount, which might be refined to beyond the $100,000 figure. I don't know if staff would like to respond to that, or a council colleague would, if there are further comments in general, or we're ready to move to a recommendation. Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Even if council does adopt this motion increasing the budget by $100,000, in the fall, if we see a reason to modify that, we can. So I don't see really a problem with proceeding with it. What it really does is it indicates to the consultants that we want these options built into the project plan. And since my understanding is the early tasks are for them to figure out the project plan and the community engagement and so on, I think telling them that we want those tasks included, or those options included, is probably important.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rintoul.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And with respect to Councillor Wainwright's comments, I continue to be less comfortable with the second recommendation. I think it sends the wrong message to whoever we contract with respect to the budget that we've previously set. And so we went out to RFP. We had a budget of $150,000. We have options here that fall within that $150,000. I think it sends the wrong message to our community as well, frankly, if we agree to go above that essentially for the options that have been added in. So at this point, I'll move the recommendation that the consulting contract for the OCP review and update project be awarded to Modus Planning, Design and Engagement.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Second, Councillor Duncan, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to finally weigh in on the budget increase.
If I could, Councillor Duncan, we have the first motion before.
I know,
If-
you didn't see me waving before.
Okay, well, we are going to be coming to it.
Okay.
So after this motion, so if we could entertain discussion on the motion on the floor, recommendation number 1, Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some good points being raised by everybody. I had sort of a different take on this. For me, I realize present circumstances aside, the OCP is probably the most important thing we're going to do during our term. Getting this right, getting the right persons and contract for the RFP set up is an important first step in going along that process. For me, my difficulty along the whole recommendation, and I completely respect the expertise and knowledge of staff, is for me having the background and knowledge to make an informed and educated decision. I found for me was a little lacking. I needed a little more information in terms of pros and cons for each of the different offers that were on the table. I respect what staff is recommending highly, but I just had a little tingling inside, like I needed to know a little more as to why they were specifically more the better option, and sort of maybe like a little, you use Venn diagram, but something that showed comparisons as to pros and cons as to why they were. So I'm kind of a little hung up on that. That's just my own little thing as regards to the first recommendation. So, but I have heard what everybody said, and I'm keeping that in consideration in my decision. Thank you.
Did you have an additional question you'd like to direct to staff, Councillor Garnett? Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on recommendation number 1? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? We have 1 opposed, and the motion carries. We have a second recommendation before us.
Actually, I'm proposing actually something different than is in the staff report, but even though we've just made a decision about who we're going to award the contract to, I see some merit in answering Councillor Garnett's question, and I think staff probably could prepare a fairly simple, brief pros and cons of the proposals that were reviewed, and that might provide some comfort, even if it's after the fact. So I'm going to move that staff prepare a brief pros and cons summary of the 4 proposals.
Discussion? Councillor Rintoul?
Well, I appreciate the comment. We've made a decision on who the contractor is. I'm quite convinced that staff have an awful lot on their plate in the current climate, and I will not support the motion.
Councillor Wainwright?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate staff have a lot on their plate. I mean, I really do. But this is probably the most significant project we're gonna do in our term, and well, with the exception of the COVID response, but from our community's perspective as well, and I think people would like to be confident that we've made the right choice. And staff have given us a brief verbal summary of why the recommendation, which I think is great, but I think going that small extra step of providing the additional clarity would be of general benefit.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment if I might. I won't support the motion. I think if the majority of council were to support this motion, I think it could give the indication that at such time further information came forward that we might actually reconsider the granting of this contract. And I think we've taken the decision to award the contract. And while I don't know that the information is going to give us additional comfort, we would either be reconsidering what we've just approved this evening, or we wouldn't. And I would prefer, quite frankly, a report after staff have worked with the consultant over the next several months, again coming in the fall with an update as to how the project is proceeding, and us again addressing the additional budgetary considerations. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I concur with Councillor Rintoul and the mayor on this. I think we've made the decision. I think if we had questions about the pros and cons, I think those are good questions to ask, but I think we should have asked those beforehand if we had those questions. But I think it is good I would appreciate some information at some point just about what is in the, not having seen the statement of the requirements, and what is been agreed to with the consultant that we've approved. I would appreciate just seeing that, what that is in the future, just so we have an understanding of the parameters of what, what is the amount of engagement that these guys, this company proposed, that sort of thing. And I presume that would probably come out in the plan that staff brings forward to council. So I'd be more inclined to see something like that. So I won't support the motion.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is defeated. Thank you.
I'll move the final motion that the 2021 fiscal year budget for the OCP review and update project be increased to $100,000.
Second.
Discussion? Councillor Rintoul?
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just reiterate, Mr. Mayor, and to my council colleagues, that I'm uncomfortable in advance greenlighting this expenditure, given the current climate. I'm not suggesting my colleagues are at all entertaining being disrespectful to the taxpayers and residents by any stretch. What I'm suggesting is we've agreed to contract Modus under the terms of the process, and these optional extras should, during the course of the strategic planning process, decide that they need to be exercised, can be revisited at that time. It doesn't need to be approved today, and it doesn't need to send that signal to contractors that work with the town either. Thank you.
Just before going to Mr. Hissick, a question to Mr. Hissick. Did council, through its 2020 budget deliberations earlier this spring, late winter, approve $50,000 in the 2021 budget?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. The total budget is 150, with 100 being in 2020 and the remaining 50 being next year. So what the report recommends is bringing it up by another 50,000 next year to a total of 2. And just to confirm, with what's been awarded now, the base contract price was 150. Staff's estimate, as outlined in the report, for non-consulting costs is about 20. So right now we're sitting at 170 with the consultant costs plus all the advertising, room rentals, etc. It sounds like council is not ready to go to the full 2 yet, and what we might propose is that staff report back to you with options for either reducing the extras or even the base contract and what that might look like in terms of savings, and you could weigh that against the benefits or the repercussions of not doing it to the extent desired.
Okay, again, for clarification, thank you for that, Mr. Hisik. For clarification, if council approved $100,000, in our recent budget deliberations, we approved $100,000 for 2020 and $50,000 for 2021. Wouldn't it more accurately, a recommendation to be $50,000 and not 100?
Well, the recommendation is to increase it to 100, not by 100. The report in the financial implications indicates that we're only asking for an additional 50. Perhaps the recommendation could have been worded more clearly, but the gist of it is that it's going from 50 to 100, so the increase is only 50,000.
Okay, thank you for that. So I do have comfort in the fact that we've awarded the contract this evening, and we do have in our budget $150,000 this year and next. And that I would support, further to Mr. Hisik's comment, that we can consider the 50,000 or whatever is the appropriate amount recommended by staff in the fall leading up to budget deliberations. But we do have the motion before us. I'll go to Councillor Duncan, then Councillor.
No, I was just pointing out that.
Thank you. Traffic signals.
Thank you. I had two comments regarding the increase to 100,000. Looking at the fact that we got 4 proposals and one was under the amount, and our staff have said that they were very bare bones. The others, the 2 in the middle, very clearly fudged around until they just squeaked underneath and then moved what they thought else had to be done into optional extras, and then somebody else just went full bore. There's no way that what you are asking for can be done within the amount you've asked, and we know what other municipalities have budgeted for their OCPs and what they have asked for. So I'm willing to give that perhaps in this case we may have under budgeted for the scope that we were expecting, and that's part of the signal that these consultants who understand how much work it actually takes to do this are saying it's actually going to cost. And so I'm comfortable with them saying, no, in reality, if you want to get what you want to get, this is probably what it's going to be. And then saying, you know, these other pieces can be optional if that budget piece is most important to you. But if you really want to get that good stuff, and it sounds like staff is saying what they were saying was good, was that additional communication, which is kind of an additional expectation that communities now have that would not have been necessarily considered when putting forward a budget for an OCP started being discussed. That is how we're accounting for that. So I'm actually comfortable with that. And the second thing that I'm comfortable with, though, is actually kind of saying, as Councillor Rintoul is saying, that now conditions have changed and we might be paying more attention to our budget as a result of COVID-19. I feel in this case, as staff has pointed out, this is one of the biggest projects that we've been planning for a long time, and that's going to have a big implication on our town. And this might be actually really the perfect time too, if we need to throw more money at it for communication and for consultation purposes, to do it now, because right now we've just had a big crisis, and crises kind of expose to people what's important to them, and will expose to them a lot of, if there are weaknesses that we need to compensate for, if there are strengths they see that we can build, things that they haven't been considering to date. This is all going to be top of mind and really fresh in people's minds. And if we can throw a little bit extra money at them now as a result of this crisis, I think we might get some really good stuff. So I'm willing to kind of take some of that and put it forward to this under that broader consultation strategy that I think a lot of people are hoping for.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think I have Councillor Wainwright and Councillor O'Keefe.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I understood Mr. Hisik's comments correctly, we've got about $20,000 of costs that are over and above the contract with the consultant, and the staff report is suggesting that's things like advertising, facility rentals, and so on. So if that's the case, if we award a contract for $150,000 and our budget is only $150,000, we haven't budgeted for any of that. So it sounds like if we accept the $150,000 proposal, which we've just done, we have to increase the budget by at least 20,000 to cover those kind of non-contract costs. So that would be a motion to increase it to 70,000. But if we want the options, that's the additional 30. I think that's what's going on. But I don't think we can say we're going to hold the line at 150 because we agreed it was going to be 150.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm with Councillor Brintoul on this one in terms of holding off on allocating the money, the additional funds. So without having seen the actual statement of requirements, I'm presuming that within the contract, that amount of $149,986 is that staff identified in our statement of requirements for the RFP, what sort of community engagement we wanted, what sort of aspects we want covered. And so, and my assumption also is that they indicated that the four firms that are here met the basic requirements, and I'm presuming that the reason, we heard some of the reasons before as to why they picked this person based on their level of expertise, their experience in this sort of thing. So while I'm happy to allocate perhaps additional money for additional engagement, etc., I want to make sure that that's what those optional extras are for. And I would want to see, before we allocate any money, the plan that Mr. Hisek mentioned earlier about plans for engagement, what the timeline would be, and what those optional extras. So if it's going to be value added, that's fine, but I just don't want to give carte blanche to the consultant to do whatever. I want us to be able to review the plan and say, before we go throwing money away, to look at what those additional things are going to be, and that we deem that those are worth that extra money.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further comment? Councillor Duncan?
I guess we should just confirm that we still have the chance to review their plan and their communications plan and what they would be doing, because that will come out within a couple of months. And if we don't like that, then we don't have to approve it when we actually discuss the 2021 budget. So we will definitely, without changing the way our process is working now, still have an opportunity to review that plan and make sure that it's actually worth that money. So I'm still comfortable with saying that we're putting in a placeholder for it to be in next year's budget for us to discuss.
Certainly, as we've indicated in the terms of reference for the OCP review committee, that includes community participants, 7 community participants. Plans will be reviewed by that committee and by council prior to moving forward. So I don't think we're taking a leap here. I think we've outlaid the process that we'll be engaging in. Councillor O'Keefe.
Yes, thank you. Just a question through you to staff. So the contract would be awarded as originally advertised for. So if we go to award the contract, it will be for 149, or would it be for 179,986? So if we're going to approve an additional amount, when we go to sign the contract with this company, are we telling them in the contract that you've got $189,000 to work with, or the original amount that we?
No, we would not be giving them full credit for all of the extras at this point. It would be, and Mr. Newcomb can correct me if he sees it differently, but I see it as a contract for the base amount with the unit rates established for, call it a la carte extras as proposed, and the decision on when to allocate those extra tasks would be made by perhaps the review committee in conjunction with council and at a future date.
Okay,
Any further discussion? So we have a motion on the floor to increase the budget to 100,000. I'll call the question. All those in favor? We have 3 in favor. Opposed? We have 4 opposed. The motion is defeated. Thank you for that fulsome discussion. We'll now move to, thank you, Mr. Newcomb.
Thank you.
We'll now move to item 13B, the monthly building report for February.
Move receipt for information.
Any discussion? Councillor Rintoul.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I know the last time we saw this report, I asked a couple of questions of staff with respect to process and timelines for building permits to be completed and carried out. So I'd like, if I could, through to staff, and I'd understand if the information isn't readily available today, but to gauge staff's sense of how many building permits, may be reaching that sort of renewal point or extension point in the context of the current climate, and likewise, perhaps in future reporting, some information around the status of development permits as well, and timelines in relation to development permits.
Through the mayor to Councillor Rintoul, yes, we can look at that. We don't have the information obviously right now, but it's something that we can report back to council on at a subsequent council meeting.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, and perhaps a slightly additional comment to that is that might we consider, and we would certainly take staff's recommendation contained within a report, considering an amendment to what's allowed, by the province in our local government operations to actually extend building permits. The building permit process is in similar fashion to what we're seeking from the province now to extend powers to extend taxation collection dates.
We'll look into it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. We'll move to item 14A, correspondence. So we have a letter from the District of Central Saanich dated March 5th with regards to joint meeting shared OCP planning. We have a recommendation.
I will move that. Oh, sorry. Thank you. I'll move the recommendation that the 3 Peninsula mayors, CAOs, and directors of finance meet with the PS. Oh, sorry, wrong one. I will move that staff refer to staff to report back to council regarding possible areas of overlap, collaboration, and cooperation regarding the respective OCP review processes of the 3 municipalities.
Second.
Discussion? I'll call a question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. I now move to item 14B, which is a turf proposal for Blue Heron Park from email correspondence from the Peninsula Soccer Association dated February 12th. We have a recommendation.
I'll move that the 3 Peninsula mayors, CAOs, and directors of finance meet with the PSA representatives to discuss details of their proposal and future budgetary considerations.
Second.
Discussion. Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like my colleagues, I've taken a look at the information provided from Peninsula Soccer Association. I found it somewhat surprising that there's no acknowledgement there with respect to the relationship they have with the Memorial Park Society, who is their landlord, and that there's no evidence of the level of support that Peninsula Soccer receives from the Memorial Park Society in terms of its very favorable lease conditions. I also find that without acknowledging that relationship and or the status of the current lease agreement, that it's difficult to seek financial support from any body, be it municipality or granting institution, I would expect. My comment to the recommendation, the motion on the table is that if the mayor is comfortable with allocating this number of resources to a meeting of this nature, then I suppose I'll support it. But I would think it's very difficult to get 3 mayors, 3 CAOs, and 3 directors of finance around a table to discuss this particular matter. I don't think it's at that place yet. I'm certainly supportive of seeing grant initiatives move forward, of a turf field such as being proposed. Our budget cycle is come and gone for this year, so I don't know that it's urgent. And I'll leave my comments there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Just before I go to other councillors, I think for the benefit of the public, because this is significant for our community. Peninsula Soccer has been working for many years to try to bring artificial turf fields to our local communities. And I would just like to read, while it's contained in the council package for those who have not had the opportunity to view it, I'd just like to read the introductory paragraphs to Mayor and Council from the Peninsula Soccer Association to bring some clarification to where this project is at. So it reads, and I quote, "As you know, Peninsula Soccer has been actively engaged in bringing artificial turf fields to our local Peninsula community for several years. As it stands right now, PFC is waiting for a reply from our most recent grant application that would cover approximately 75% of the total costs. The rest to come from the PFC, local government sponsors, and in-kind donation. Although we remain optimistic with regards to our application, we feel it would be prudent to explore other options if our application does not come to fruition. As a result, we have proposed a plan to reach our goal by sharing the cost of the project between the 3 municipalities, PFC, and the local community." And so the request actually amongst the 3 municipalities is for $1.8 million. That's a very significant project. And so the situation is that PFC does have a current grant application in process. They're waiting to hear from the Provincial Granting Authority. We don't know how the current health emergency will affect the timing of that decision. I acknowledge Councillor Rintoul's points with regards to Peninsula mayors and CAOs getting together at this time. I would still be in favor of the motion, and I think as we're doing with other non-essential services and projects in the town, that we would have the motion in hand, but we would certainly wait until an appropriate time to begin engaging the other our colleagues in other municipalities in the Soccer Association. We had next as a speaker, Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After having read the proposal and what they're asking, the one thing I found to be glaringly missing from it is that there's no discussion whatsoever of the environmental impacts of covering over that much grass with basically rubber. So I would like to see, if you do attend this meeting, I'd like to see something, if you could ask questions regarding, Mr. Mayor, if they've done any kind of impact studies and what that might do to the environment, being that they're right next to Blue Heron Park and the animals that live there, and how that sort of fits in with the ecosystem that's in that system and in that area. Thank you.
Okay, I might just comment that that Mr. Humble and I did have a meeting at Peninsula Soccer's request, and I think there was acknowledgement that more information would be needed for staff and council to be considering this moving forward, and hence the discussions with the other municipalities, given the size of the request and among the 3 municipalities. This is kind of unique, going to 3 municipalities at the same time asking for these sums of community support. I'll then go to Councillor Duncan next, and then Councillor Fallon.
Thank you. I had the same concern as Councillor Garnett, not just about the changes in infiltration, but about the potential for shedding of microplastics. I've heard that's fairly substantial with these fields, and also that they're not as durable, or at least the first generation that they put out were not as durable as they expected them to be. And I am worried about the ongoing maintenance costs and replacement costs of this continuing, that once we've said we're going to replace a field, now we're on the hook for having to replace a field every 5 years or something that was not anticipated. So I'd really like to see a lot of additional information about what this product is like, not just environmentally, but also on the wear and tear.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Fallon.
Thank you, and I will echo the comments that have come before me regarding the environment, and I did a very brief bit of sorry, I will echo the comments of my councillors regarding the environmental impact. I did a very brief little bit of research, the pros and cons, artificial turf. Then we've got the fertilizer and the water for real grass and the lawnmower. So we could probably run a 50-50 on that one. But one thing that came out through the research I did is to ensure that the turf, that is, if that is what we're going to do, that it is recyclable. Because at the end of it, and as Councillor Duncan was just talking about, regardless of its length, whether it's 5 years or 25 years, it's going to end up in landfill at some point. And then what happens? This is not, while I appreciate the children and the people who are playing soccer and all of the supporting industries that are part of this economic cycle that this is working in, and the benefits for our community, the environmental impact cannot be taken lightly, and we have to ensure that we're making a wise decision with as much information regarding this as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in support of the motion to have some further discussions on this. One of the other things I would like to discuss, as was mentioned, Councillor Rintoul, I believe, in regards to Memorial Park Society. And what I'd like to find out is what level of support they will be planning to put towards this. What I note is that I was part of the committee that built the fields that are at Blue Heron right now. There was significant effort and cost that the soccer club went to build those fields. And I don't know if the public knows that that was done pretty well by the soccer club itself. So the fundraising that was done, they did get some government grants, but a lot of blood and sweat of Peninsula Soccer members themselves actually working to make that happen. So it's a very costly venture, and there was little support from Memorial Park Society at that time because they didn't have the funds. The other thing I think that's worth noting is that I don't believe that there's any soccer club. There's several soccer clubs in the CRD region. None of them are required to build and maintain their own soccer fields. So for Peninsula Soccer Organization to have built that field, to have installed those lights, and those are a benefit to the entire community. It's not just for Peninsula Soccer Club. There's others that are available to use those fields. So I think it's important for council and for the community to realize that. In terms of the environmental aspects, there's certainly that to consider, but turf fields, the construction of them, the materials, and the methods that they use to mitigate the environmental impact have advanced significantly over the past several years. So I think that there's ways around that. And sorry, getting back to Memorial Park Society again, what I would like to see is that, the town provides a significant chunk of money to the Mary Winspear Center and Memorial Park Society to operate that building and that cultural center, and I think that's a good investment. But what I would like to see more is that they use some of the funds that they get from the town, maybe the $80,000 a year they're getting from the town for the parking lot, and consider a redistribution of how they're supporting their other assets, like Blue Heron Park. And so that would be a question that I would ask the mayors to talk about when with the Soccer Association and Memorial Park Society when they get into those discussions. Yeah, that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. There are many things, many considerations in the discussions that will occur, and there are many that have not come before us tonight. So I appreciate councillors' input. The resolution before us is to engage in meetings and acquire more information. So thank you for those comments, and I'll now look to call the question. All those in favor? None opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. We have no new business this evening. We have correspondence for information.
Mr. Mayor, I beg your pardon.
Yes.
I'll move receipt for information. Would like to pull number 9, please, for discussion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, we will pull that for discussion. And so if we could have a motion to receive the remaining items under correspondence.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. I'll now turn to item 16.9. Councillor Rintoul.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess if I could, not anticipating any specificity necessarily tonight, but around the matter that is addressed here around a sandwich board for a business trying to, I guess, assist in its profile given the volume of construction where it's located, and also a decrease in foot traffic in town, partly referenced here as well for not just the construction but also the pandemic and the restrictions on movement. I guess my question to staff would be, the response to the applicant at this point in time was to seek a development variance permit for this sandwich board to help profile the business. What is the cost associated with applying for a permit of that nature?
I believe it's, if I remember correctly, I believe it's a $250 fee.
Okay. And time typically to process and receive approval for a request of that nature?
Typically, I believe you're looking at, typical timeline would be around 8 weeks or so.
Okay. So thank you, and I guess it's part of the greater challenge that the community is facing with so much construction happening within a congested area, and also, of course, with some limited pedestrian traffic in relation to public health issues. And so my request would be that we look to staff to see if there's any mechanism to try and alleviate either costs associated with requests of this particular nature and process perhaps to expedite approvals for similar requests of this nature. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Humble?
Just if I can, it's, yeah, no, I can appreciate the desire to maybe look into potential avenues around this. The challenge is that we're governed by the bylaws around this. So whether it's the fees bylaw or the bylaw that regulates the signage, so it's a challenge because we can't waive or simply just amend our bylaws. There's a process for it. So there aren't we can look into it, but I don't believe that there are a lot of avenues that would allow us to certainly look at reducing the costs without amending the bylaws.
Yeah, so just a comment. So a variance request could certainly be considered by council. We know that's going to be a challenge given the current environment. Or we amend our bylaws, and that's going to be even a lengthy process. I think the challenge is that there are a number of businesses impacted in different ways by the current construction underway, and that will continue and be others into the future. And my preference at this point would be to deal with them on a case-by-case basis. And if we can deal with it more expeditiously, that particular business is closed at the moment in the current emergency. But when things get back to normal, I think I would be willing to look at reviewing this again. But that would require a motion from council to raise this to consider at a future time. We will have to have a motion to receive this correspondence, both the letter from DigThis and the town's reply. But then we would need, if we want to give direction to staff, we would need a motion arising subsequent to that. So,
Another other hands up. I'm inclined to look to make such a motion. I guess I'd like to hear from other councillors first in terms of their thoughts. For myself, the challenge around the construction, could be there for the foreseeable future, and so I'd like to be able to start the ball rolling to address that challenge. Looking positively, thinking to getting to the other side of the sort of public health restrictions that we're seeing currently that are prohibiting people from gathering at establishments such as this one. So I'd like to maybe try and get the ball started and being able to address this. I'll leave my comment there.
okay, just a point of clarification, for the ball to roll again, Digdis would need to submit a development variance permit application. We've responded to the letter in that fashion, so there would have to be a subsequent letter to, or I don't know, Mr. Humble, could you comment perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, again, without having planning staff here and being able to comment on it at this point, it's going to be a challenge, and let us look at the correspondence, I guess.
Okay, we have a number of councillors, Councillor O'Keefe, then Councillor Garnett, then Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so this was also something that caught my eye, and concern also for local business owners who are struggling as a result of the construction and now this other health crisis that we're in. So I also support, staff looking into ways that we can mitigate things for them. Maybe if that's something that can be added to the business continuity plans that will be worked on in the future. I guess, so here's another question. If hypothetically a business owner were to put out a sign without permission of council, and is it normally, enforcement staff that would come and say, you're not allowed to do that, and what would the fine be for that?
Yeah, I mean, if signage goes up that's non-compliant, it's going to be enforcement. It'll be enforcement staff that have to address it. I guarantee you, we're going to get complaints and concerns from others that are looking at that and want to create a level playing field. So, what we do for one, then we're looking at having to address that for others as well. So, ignoring our bylaws, we typically don't go out looking for infractions. If we get complaints, we're obligated to obviously go out and act on that and try to address it. So,
just one other follow-up question,
sure,
if I may. I don't recall if there's any wayfaring signage on that particular.
Sorry, I was wanting to speak to that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So again, based on the history, there's been a long history in terms of sandwich board signs by businesses on Beacon Avenue and by businesses off Beacon Avenue, putting them on Beacon Avenue, and there's been enforcement, and the BIA took the initiative, a couple of years ago now, Mr. Humble, to address this in terms of the requests for side street businesses to have some presence on Beacon Avenue, and hence we do have the signage that previous council approved, and this name is on the sign that is on that corner on the northeast corner of 3rd and Beacon Avenue. But they're requesting, in their circumstances, which are unique, there is a very significant project immediately adjacent to them that is going to remain under construction for the next 2 years, and I would be sympathetic to giving consideration to the request. However, we do have a process, and as Mr. Humble has indicated, if we were to grant that request, we could fully expect on all the side streets in Sydney that businesses will seek and we'll go back to a similar situation we had in the past. We'll go to Mr. Humble and then Councillor Fallot was next on the speaking list.
Yeah, if we go down the road without going through the process, I would guarantee we're going to be in an issue where we're gonna see a proliferation again of sandwich board signs on Beacon Avenue and our side streets. I went through this 12 years ago, 13 years ago, when we had so many sandwich board signs on our public right-of-ways that it was becoming a hazard for our pedestrians, for people in mobility scooters, that sort of thing. So it's a situation where if you do let it get out of hand, it becomes a significant issue. So I mean, again, I would honestly let us sort of review what potential avenues or processes there might be and follow those processes accordingly.
Okay, so I would ask council now, we've had consideration of this. I will let Councillor Fallot speak, but I would ask that we subsequently make a motion to receive this, and then perhaps a subsequent motion to refer this to staff to bring back a report at the appropriate time. Councillor Fallot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly took a look at the site and recognized that the current wayfinding site is sort of disappears into the woodwork with everything that's happening. And I believe that this falls more under a construction management plan, because this is about the construction that's going on, and there might be something that we need to do when there is construction happening in the commercial core, where businesses are going to be obscured or somehow hidden, that additional signage for their business is visible to ensure that they have business continuity during construction that has nothing to do with them.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to move receipt of the letter and ask for staff to report on temporary approval options for signage in relation to construction zones.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. We now have a motion to, with no notices of motion, we have a motion to go on camera.
I'll move that it is in the opinion of council that the public interest requires that persons other than members of the council and officers be excluded from the meeting to consider confidential matters respecting personal information pursuant to section 90.1A of the community charter, and that the council continue the meeting in closed session.
All those in favor? Motion carries. Before we go to a motion to adjourn, I know some members of the public who might be on webcast might have already turned out, but I do want to apologize. I did catch at the end that one or more councillors may have not had their microphone on at the time. That's particularly important for being able to webcast. We can get by without it in the chamber, but I apologize beforehand, and we'll be more diligent in the future if that did occur this evening. If I could have a motion of adjournment, please.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.